Hunters have many different motivations for going afield. The top priority is typically to fill their freezer with good table fare. For some, it's a tradition that connects generations. It's all about the memories made in the woods with friends and family. For others, it's about responsibility, wanting to know exactly how a meal arrived to their plate. Nico Hampel was compelled to learn hunting as part of an effort to be more self-reliant. Unlike many folks you hear on the podcast, Nico does not work for the department. I met him after he applied for a department-organized mentored hunting program in 2019. You'll hear more about that later. But first, my name is Katie Yates, and this is Season 4 of the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife's podcast, Fishing Game Changers. In this series, Take Aim, I'm talking with Mainers of different backgrounds to learn about their first steps into hunting. Nico grew up in Maine and considers our state's access to the outdoors and the ability to get away from it all a unique privilege.
It's a privilege to be able to have been born here and then at an early age understand the value of growing up here and being able to have the privilege to continue to live here. Most of the kids that I hung around with, went to school with, as soon as they graduated from high school here, they shot out. They went everywhere. Everyone leaves, and that's been a chronic problem for our state. But if you realize the lack of violence, the lack of real stressful issues here, you can have a really nice life. There's no traffic here. No matter what happens on Route 1 in Wiscasset, that's the worst traffic gets in the summertime. Or the 295 rush in Portland at 4:30, but that's nothing compared to, when I was 19, I moved out to Seattle. Real traffic out there, 4 lanes of I-5. I lived 3.5 miles from where I worked for a period of time in Bellevue. It took me over an hour and a half to get home one day. I had never experienced that. I'm like, I could have run home faster. I recommend everyone lives out of Maine for some period of time, but then come back, because why wouldn't you?
Nico has always liked going outside, but his interest in hunting stemmed from his desire to be self-reliant. The initial phases of this goal took many forms, such as buying bulk food from the grocery store, until his father-in-law forwarded him an email from the department. So did you always like going outside?
Yeah. I had a really good teacher when I was 12 years old in 6th grade that was all about the outdoors. I mean, growing up as an only child in the middle of nowhere, you kind of have to like the outdoors. But that experience, that exposure allowed me to really understand a bit more about what happens in the woods. But it never fully matriculated into being a typical Mainer, I guess, that's interested in the outdoors. I never went hunting because my parents were from away. We didn't really have those connections to people that had grown up hunting for generations, That was never an option for me at that point. And as I grew up, especially since it wasn't big in my household, our idea of hunting was finding a good deal at the supermarket. There wasn't going and sitting in the woods waiting for a deer to come by or anything. So I never really had the chance and exposure to that. I think over the last 10 years, at least, I've wanted to be more self-reliant, really ensuring that I was staying survivable in every which way or form. It was looking at a bit of economics and a bit of, just social aspects of our culture. I'm like, I want to be able to get us food if I need to, type thing. And I didn't have the skills to do that. So, I wanted to be more self-reliant, which started out just buying bulk food. Wow, weird concept. And then actually it was my father-in-law that sent me this email in the springtime last year about this Learn to Hunt program. And I'm like, it sounds like it could be a cool activity.
All right. I'm going to pause Nico for a moment to give you some backstory. In 2019, the department organized a mentored hunt for new adult hunters. The email Nico is referring to was sent in spring 2019 to encourage new hunters to apply for the experience. The mentored hunt was the first of its kind for the department. We aim to help adults interested in hunting get everything from the very basics to actually harvesting a deer, field dressing, and butchering under the careful guidance of 9 department mentors. Selected applicants were also required to participate in a range safety day. The program fulfilled 2 goals, one being to educate new hunters. The other was a management goal. Swan Island in Richmond, Maine, you may have taken the ferry to walk the trails or stay in the campground, has an overabundance of deer. While hunting is not allowed on the island, the overpopulation of deer is not great for the health of the herd or the island ecology. The overabundance of deer provided ample opportunity for the mentored hunters, and the harvest would help manage the deer population. During the one-day mentored hunt in October, the island was closed to the public, and a tagging station was set up in the campground. In addition to the actual mentored hunt in October, the department hosted several hunting-themed workshops on the island in the summer of 2019. Selected mentees were encouraged to attend. These free workshops were open to the public, and students learned field dressing, ground blind and tree stand setup, scouting, blood tracking, butchering, and cooking venison. Nico, who had very little experience hunting, had all the makings of a hunter. He had some know-how, comfort in the outdoors, and proficiency with a firearm. But like many first-time hunters, his first attempts had him questioning, "Am I doing this right?"
I had gone out once before. I had taken my hunter safety class when I was like 15 or 16, really young. I'd gone out once when I was in my late 20s, and it was literally just nature bathing. I like to call it American nature bathing. We're out there in the woods sitting doing nothing, armed. So you're just sitting there for hours and then you're bored. So what was the point of that? And I came really close to the realization that I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea. Like, I could point and track deer on the ground, no problem. Snow or not. But I didn't know anything about hunting, like no idea. So really that class, that opportunity, that email was like, oh, now I can actually learn from people that know way more. So that email really was the clincher of, hey, you can learn how to do this and do it right. And so it was a great thing. So I'm like, oh yeah, no, that sounds cool. I talked to we weren't even married at that point, I don't think.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
no, yeah, we weren't even married at that point. We talked about it, and she's like, yeah, no, go for it. So, yeah, I mean, I applied for that, had no thought that I would ever get selected to go for it. It was just like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll fill in all this stuff and send and then forget about it. And then came back with the email that I had been selected, and it was great.
The hands-on learning was key for Nico. In last week's episode, Matt Lebeko described trying to watch a YouTube video in his house, then running out to his deer in the middle of the night in the freezing cold. Nico had the benefit of practicing field dressing on the island prior to his mentored hunt at one of the workshops. Nico harvested a deer on Swan Island during the mentored hunt, and Nico's mentor, wildlife biologist Kendall Martin, took Nico through every step.
Yeah, no, I mean, the program was amazing. Being able to, instead of just sitting at a computer and watching YouTube, you got to have that real, true learning experience of butchering a deer, which is something you really need to do and be with someone that knows how to do it right. Going through that whole process of, heck, even the firearm safety and stuff and the range day was a great experience. You know, I don't know whether it was set up this way or whether Kendall Martin is just one of the kindest people on the earth. But when we harvested that deer, that wasn't the end of it. He's like, why don't you come over to the house? I'll show you how. I mean, we quartered the deer on the island, but he goes, I'll show you how to break it down, and we'll, vacuum seal it after we, cut it up and grind it and everything, because he's got all the equipment. And like, it was a wonderful experience to be able to spend the hours that it took me. That guy, a master with a knife. Me, I'm fumbling over here doing in 5 hours what it takes in 1 hour to do. But it was a great learning experience.
Nico harvested a deer on Swan Island, but his deer did not contribute to his bag limit for the season. So hunters who participated in the hunt as mentees could go hunting during the regular hunting season in November.
Once that program ended, it was time to actually put all the skills to work. And so I had gone out to my parents' house because they have 50 acres out back.
Oh, wow,
and
perfect spot.
Yeah, no, it's great. So I went out to my parents' house and sat for a bit and didn't see any deer and, really tried. First lesson I really learned was you have to wake up really early. Like, you just have to. But your body has to be used to doing that or else you're going to fall asleep in the first 3 hours, right? So I battled with that a little bit, staying awake and conscious and focused on what I was doing, not getting bored.
Nico wasn't having much luck on his parents' property, but due to his success on Swan Island, he received an exclusive invitation.
having done all of this, it allowed me one golden ticket entrance to hunting camp with my now new family after being married. And so they have had a family camp out in Upton, which is a wonderful little place, but practically nowhere near New Hampshire. But I got invited to go out there. Brother-in-law was back from where he's living in Germany. A couple of the other brother-in-laws came up, and my father-in-law was there, of course. And so I got there on, I think it was Thursday afternoon, did a little scouting just to see how it was. We got some snow that day before I got there, and saw plenty of tracks around. That night, my brother-in-law had deer calls on his cell phone, and so he's playing a buck grunt, and I'm like, oh, that's fun, like, let me know how it works for you. We go out. Apparently no one was an early riser. We ended up getting up around 7:30, getting out there by 8 or 9, and we drove out to I drove out with my father-in-law to where he was parking his truck. My father-in-law was like, oh, I'll walk this way, you walk that way. I'm like, no problem. So I just start getting lost in the woods, just wandering without purpose, looking at the ground, and trying to be mindful of where I am. And I actually have, I've been paying attention to the little logging road that I'm walking down, and I see a couple of tracks going from right to left in the snow. I'm like, oh, those look pretty fresh. The track wall and the horizon are pretty well shaped, and they're cut. And they've got that forward right to left movement. Cool. So I'll stand here and look at these for a few seconds, and then I'm like, all right, get bored of it. And I keep walking on, but then I hear a grunt like it's coming from my brother-in-law's cell phone. I'm like, great. I just walked under someone's deer stand, like I had my head in the sand, or in the snow in this case, and I wasn't paying attention to my environment, and I probably just ruined someone else's hunting experience. Pick my head up, I look around, I don't see a deer stand. I hear another grunt, and I'm just like, okay, so someone's still playing a game with me. But then I hear off to my right a little bit, a tree branch snap. Of course, I froze completely, and I'm trying not to make any movement, slow my breathing down, and out from the brush steps this 10-point buck. It's huge. And I realized, I've got this choice to make. Is this a deer that I'm going to shoot and kill? Or is it one that I'm just going to, let walk away? And I'm standing there, and I'm looking, oh, it's got horns. This is great. Let's try to see how many points it's got, because apparently that's an issue. And I counted 10, or what I thought was 10. It was at least more than one. And I'm like, I can't let this thing go. I'll never hear the end of it, and no one will believe me either. When the buck came out of the brush, it was 40 feet away. It was very close, and it was staring right at me. And my gun was right on it, and it just kind of looked at me, sniffed around a little bit, and then continued to eat and come closer to me. And I realized that if I'm going to shoot, this deer, I've got to, really line up a really good shot, really know where my target areas are, get my breathing and trigger squeeze down to where it needs to be in order to not miss, like a broadside of a barn here. So it took a few more steps forward, and then finally I realized this is the time. I was aiming right at its heart. I wish that I could say that the final squeeze of the trigger was purely conscious, but it wasn't. The gun went off. I'm like, I hope I hit it. It tried to run away, started making a big bounding circle off to its left, coming back where it had come from. And one thing that I definitely remembered from the course and all the readings that I had done was just to let it go. After 30, 40 seconds, I went to go look at the point right before the deer was shot, and I could see the big claw marks right into the snow kicking, and then the bound out, and there was this giant red area in the snow, and figured that I did in fact hit this deer, which was good. I just had hoped that I hit it in the right spot to do as much trauma as possible, but as humanely as possible.
Yeah, it's a little stress.
Yeah, that's been my whole thing with the act of harvesting animals is, I don't want them to either realize what's happening or suffer.
This guy made harvesting a 10-point buck look easy, but the hard work of field dressing, quartering, and butchering the venison was still ahead.
And that's when I realized that there was a lot of work to do. This all happened within 30 minutes from leaving that truck. I mean, it was ridiculous. My father-in-law later said, "Oh, I thought you just shot at something and missed. That's why I never came to help you." I'm like, sure. I'm dragging this over 200-pound animal by its antlers. Other pro tip that I learned, get something to wheel it with, because thank goodness we had that snow, because it was like a deer sled, literally.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was totally out of shape for dragging that deer out. But I spent the afternoon and evening just quartering and trying to bone out as much of it as I could and put it in the cooler that I brought. Kendall, being the very experienced hunter that he is, suggested that I get this giant Coleman cooler and fill it with Gatorade bottles with water that has been previously frozen to help with the refrigeration and cooling. Brought it home. Heck, Kendall didn't have to. He helped me bone out the rest of the deer, and I was all set up with bags and everything, and over the next day just vacuum sealed the rest of the deer, to which we're still eating now, months later. This trip had worked out so well that all this training and learning that I had done had been very successful. I have been able to feed my family now. What a great accomplishment for someone to feel. I realized it was very lucky to come across a 10-point deer within 30 minutes of hunting at family camp. I have confirmed I have an invitation to go again this year because my brother-in-law was a little less than happy that had happened that day, and they spent the next day and a half unlucky.
For Nico, developing a good relationship with his mentor, Kendall, was his key to success. The Swan Island mentored hunt was an opportunity for him to learn and step into hunting. He's looking forward to continuing to develop connections with other hunters.
I think my big sticking point originally was I didn't have a mentor. Yeah, that's been a great relationship that has come because of the program. He's such a good person and has been so helpful. There's no community bulletin board anymore that you could say, hey, willing to train new people to do new skills. The program was zero to hero. I mean, I think that's how it was structured was, we'll take anyone that has an interest and bring them to where they've gone through a full harvest, right? And I think that was really, really successful. I mean, the program even went so far as you didn't even have to buy your own rifle or anything. Like, they literally had everything supplied that you could need, which was incredible. What a great opportunity. I mean, all the information was thought out, and it all built upon the previous thing. Just having people that really were interested in being mentors was great.
Yeah.
I mean, the skills that I learned transferred to everything. Like, my buddy, who is not someone that I ever thought to be an urban farmer, is an urban farmer now, and I'm going to help him, slaughter his pigs this fall and next year. That's how we eat, right? Meat doesn't come from styrofoam from the supermarket. It was an animal at one time, and so if you know how that all works and how all those pieces can be used. And my wife is an amazing cook, and she just loves to go on Pinterest for recipes. So if I can find obscure cuts of meat and whatnot, I know that she'll make them very, very well. So it's great. I mean, like I said, the skills have really transferred over. The program was a huge highlight last year and really gave me some skills that I'm going to use for the rest of my life, and hopefully pass down to my children. I'm looking forward to integrating a bit more into the hunting community and making more connections to learn more from people that know how to do other things or do the same things but differently. Mm-hmm. It's like an art. Everyone has a way of expressing themselves or coming to the same sort of end. If you look at a picture, there are a million different ways to make a picture, but everyone has just a slightly different way of doing things. So great to put all those tools in your box.
What a good way to end it. In next week's episode, I speak with an unlikely hunter who learned to appreciate the outdoors as an adult after participating in the Becoming an Outdoors Woman program.